Hello there, Hex combatants. My name is Nicholas Podrasky. You might know me in-game or in the community as Pentachills. Today I've stepped up to the pedestal and knocked down Michael Allen for his position as Arena Lord, and I've dragged two fighters in here with me to shed blood and tears and sweat, all in the name of glory. Ideally, I will take their heads and stick them upon a magical pike, whereas they can talk and guide me. This is episode 51, which we're calling Arenanana. On the one side, we have Gprime, William Gabriel, bringing his battle axe to bear and holding his family standard high. How are you this evening, Bloodlord Gprime the Slaughterkill?
Pretty good. A little rested, I would say. I've been playing a lot of Hex this week because Arena obviously came out through the live server, and there was a community event that I was practicing for all week as well. So I actually just took a break today. I only played 2 arena runs. I didn't play any PVE, and I basically vegged out. And tomorrow I think I'll be refreshed and ready to go.
And in the other corner, we have Tecnophi. How are you doing today, bud?
Why don't I get like an awesome title like Gprime over there? I mean,
in the other corner, we have Tien Fiem, the Ultra Lord Slaughterkill.
Ultra Lord, I like
Slaughterkill.
Well, no, I use Slaughterkill. Tecnophi is the Ultra Lord Slaughterkill.
Okay. Ultra Lord Slaughterkill. Yeah. It's been pretty good. Played a lot of PvE Arena. Having a lot of fun decks put together, and I think we'll get to touch on a few of those. I got my perfect sleeves, so ha!
Ah, congratulations! Do you have your perfect sleeves, Gprime?
I do have my perfect sleeves. Yes, I didn't really earn them on my own because I didn't build the deck that I managed to win with in a perfect succession, but I did manage to pilot it at least.
Well then, as of this time of recording, I will man up and admit I am the only one in this channel that does not have his perfect sleeves.
No.
I do have my Uranaz sleeves. Now, there's a little bit to say to that. I haven't done many arena runs that weren't on stream, and anyone watching my stream the last couple of days will know that I have built some pretty fun PvE decks, but there's a deck that I'm calling Hypercharge Aggro, which I believe Shinshire in our team slapped together rather hastily, which is just, for anyone watching, 4 burns, 4 gas trolls, 4 pack raptors, 4 lightning elementals, 4 reactor bots, 4 crackling sprouts, 4 gore masters, 4 hired horn sellswords who are 3 in cost, and 4 stink trolls, and then some resources. And with the right equipment, it blazes through the arena fairly quickly.
So even without the right equipment.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the Dandelion arm guards are a nice touch, and I think for the hired horn sellsword, I think having the armor of the hired horn is necessary to running it. Otherwise, I would supplement it with something else. But other than other than that, I think the deck is mostly good to go. A lot of people in our group have replaced the pack raptors because they don't like them, and I'm sure Will would love nothing more than to step in and touch on that. So
can I do that now?
Yeah.
This time for that? Okay, so you say that the equipment is super important, and it does definitely make a big difference, especially in the case of the Hired Horn and the Lightning Elemental, but unfortunately, my inventory is bugged, and I don't have the Lightning Elemental equipment currently that I should have, because I've won, so many Spark Mitts on the auction house, or whatever the mask is, whichever piece of equipment it is it's supposed to be. I've got plenty.
It's called the Aqua Mask.
There we go.
Which is weird because,
well, I mean,
lightning,
I guess it conducts
water,
electricity. Maybe that's kind of the thing.
Yes.
Synergy.
But anyway, I haven't got any of that equipment. So the equipment that I ran for the deck is the burn equipment. Let me get the conflagration handguards that deal 3 damage instead of 2, and then the shocker attachment for reactor bots that give +1/+1 to another robot when that one gets a charge. So I don't have anything else, and I've run the deck 3 times in arena, and I've perfected twice with that deck.
I mean, I didn't mean to say that the arena was that the equipment was super important. In fact, I think I said that it wasn't, but it helps.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, and I slightly disagree with the Hired Horn remark, because just having another high front-end troop with Crush is a boon, especially when they tend to want to block that guy, because always going to do a lot of damage to me. And this deck is really good at abusing, and I do say abusing because it is kind of abuse, the AI's tendency to not realize certain things about the deck, like how much a Gore Master can just blow up out of nowhere, or the fact that Lightning Elemental, which gets you a charge when it hits your opponent, hits first before the other stuff does, so it has a chance to charge up those troops that get extra attack with charges like Reactor Bot and Gore Master.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and touch on that one, though, because the AI has a lot of discrepancies right now. Like it
currently. I do have that as a thing to touch in on here in just a second. As a final thought and note for the deck, the Hired Horn Stalwart Sword I honestly think is easily replaced with an Ambershire Instigator or a Rechosaurus, honestly, if you just want a high-end thing. It is also worth noting that as of this recording, and that might not continue to be the case as time goes on, the Lightning Elemental's equipment, which reads, when this deals damage to an opposing champion, choose one at random, either gain a charge or gain 2 charges. Currently always gains you 2 charges.
Oh, that's certainly a bug.
Yeah, well, no, it is 100% a bug. I'm not sure that using it in that manner is necessarily exploitation, but if you are desperately trying to avoid that, you might want to. I've considered taking the equipment off, but I think their stance is that they, like, as long as it's PvE, it's not really that big of a deal. There have been some other interesting bugs, like the Cerulean Swag Knight, as a couple of people have started calling it. The alternate art Cerulean Mirror Knights, which we have to ban from the Sapphire Cup that happened 3 days ago.
Yeah, just to be clear, it's just the alternative art version.
Yeah, just the alternative art Cerulean Mirror Knights are covered in so much bling and swag that they inspire troops from the grave. As in, when they are in the grave, they inspire your troops, which
to me explains why the card is worth $80.
Yes. Also, it's amazing artwork.
Yeah, well.
So that is a pretty cool deck that, once again, I'm pretty sure it was Shinshire who came up with it. First of all, I mean, I don't really think it matters who came up with it. He's just the first one I saw posting the link. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it is Crush and Swift Strike troops that cost less than 3, as well as Gore Master in all of his glory. There's a pun there, but I can't do it.
In all his glory.
Only if you've dropped into song.
So,
actually, sorry, I didn't address Pack Raptor, and I want to do that real quick before we move on. I actually think that having a 1-drop with Swift Strike is nice, in particular against a couple of the champions that fill the board with 1/2 or 2 1s, like Zarlox and like Orc Dude.
His name is Zoltog.
Thank you,
He's
Zoltog.
almost in the deck.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that a 1-drop that can soak up those attacks is kind of handy, and I'm sure there's other troops you could put, like Ember Spire Witch in there instead,
Ronin,
maybe if you wanted.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that could fit that spot. A lot of people don't like the Pack Raptor for a couple of reasons, really. First of all, Pack Raptors are a rather expensive legendary that you would only get to touch on in PvE, which will lead to a point of discussion going on in just a little bit that I know Tecnophi is going to hate, but it is something I want to touch on.
I do hate a lot of things. So
I know. You're such a downer. But the other thing about Pack Raptor that kind of works well with the deck is if you happen to have the Stink Boots, which are a foot slot equipment, ironically, coincidentally even, your Stink Trolls actually get the, I would say, the flip ability from the Gas Troll. So they gain, whenever you play a wild card, the Stink Troll gets +1/+1. And if you have a Stink Troll out and you start playing Pack Raptors and you start getting the Clever Girl combo going...
Yeah, it's just stupid.
Yeah, your Stink Troll eventually gets out of hand. The deck has trouble with, I would say, Eldritch Dreamer and sometimes Warbot, but I think almost every deck that isn't specifically built to deal with Warbot has trouble with Warbot because he's a dinkus, and that is just the way it goes.
I think your strategy against Warbot with this deck is just put 2 troops on the board, and if he wipes you, then you can repopulate and bam, just finish him off. Usually you can actually finish him before he gets to his turn 5 anyway, so it's not that bad. But
it depends on a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Like, did he get the Shrine of Prosperity challenge?
that
because
would
sometimes that happens, and it really, really is just frustrating. And I mean, sometimes he plays a charge bot turn 1, charge Hulk turn 3, and all of a sudden he's like, la 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 la.
Or always Mastery of Time available.
The Mastery of Time challenge. As we are talking, literally a minute ago, Michael Allen, who is not here because he is actually very sick, or at least that's what he told us, apparently he's playing Arena, posted in our Skype chat that he had a boring turn 3 win against the Warbot, although he is playing a totally different hyper aggro dwarf artifact deck, which if I had the list for, we could go over real quick, but that's beside the point. It's
I've been playing also with the Dwarven artifact deck, kind of close to what was it Kydhelm was playing in the last cup?
Yeah. Do you want to bring that up and rattle off a list for people real quick?
Sure, I can talk about the key cards in there. Construction Plans Warhawk, Cherubot, VB1311, that's the PvE, new PvE troop. That's a 2/2. Upon entering play, it gets like a random ability of Flight, Spell Shield, Steadfast, Life Drain, or Invincible. And also with the ability that any artifact that transforms, it will also get a +1/+1.
I believe it's whenever a card you control transforms into an artifact.
Correct.
Which is, I mean, for the deck itself, it's basically referring to construction plans.
In this case, yeah.
But I mean, it could also refer to things like Holiday or Cosmic Transmog or Parallel No. Not that.
Yeah, not that one.
You know, cards transforming other cards into artifacts just awkwardly.
Yeah.
Replicator's Gambit, maybe?
I
wonder if that it's not a transformation, but I wonder if it triggers it. Interesting. Well, it shouldn't. I agree.
Because it only checks the battlefield, right?
Rest of the deck. Go ahead.
Yeah. So other cards in there: Burn, War Machinist. That's always a fun card to play with. Gearsmith, Time Ripple. I probably should cut the Time Ripple. Construction Plan Hornet Bot. Electroid, and Mimeobot.
That's pretty exciting.
So it's a very low curve, like 18-20 shards around that range. Mole heavily.
Yeah. Well, what typically tends to work pretty much universally in the arena right now is very fast decks, and aggro kind of makes it a lot easier than if you're trying to run into the arena with a mid-range deck. There's time for the opposing decks to kind of build up their strategy, get some stuff on the board, and then mess up what you're doing. With these decks, they just kind of roll over a little bit too quickly, and there's not much in the arena that can handle that aside from sometimes the challenges and certain opponent champions that just have abilities that might slow you down a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of feel that if you can play a decent 2-drop, 3-drop reliably, you stand a much better chance of completing that round in Arena.
Yeah, you can still get destroyed by like Zarlox's Tarantula or something, or getting shard screwed, but with lower curves like this, it's a lot harder to get shard screwed.
Absolutely. So with just a quick little touch, again, this is the Frost Ring Arena. It was released almost a week ago now, possibly a whole week ago. I totally was still basking in the glow of having gotten to talk to Corey, so I kind of, the arena came out, how surprising. But just as a quick overview, for those of you that maybe haven't touched the game in a while, the Frost Ring is the first bit of PvE content available to the game. Corey has mentioned that it is essentially, in addition to just being a pretty fun 20-battle gauntlet versus AI decks with passives and charge abilities not found anywhere else and brand new cards and equipment available, it is the founding stones of the rest of PvE content. So that's cool. Equipment is in, and there's about 150 pieces, and yesterday there was a hotfix. 5 days ago now or so, there was a hotfix that enabled some of the missing pieces, so now I believe all of the pieces of equipment that were released in the first patch are actually available to be found on loot tables, because for a little while there was certainly some missing, which was kind of upsetting. Some of the pieces of equipment range in power from, I would say, neat, all the way up to absolutely insane. Things on the neat side of the table include just simple things like your town criers now have, when this enters play, ready all humans you control, in addition to their choose and discard and draw cards for each human, all the way up to the absolute insanity of things like when Archmage Renlock enters play, choose an action in your graveyard and put it back into your hand, or each of your cards named Jags the Blades Master now inspire triple damage.
What has been the most crazy equipment you've gotten so far, Penta?
I have quite a bit of equipment. Well, I haven't played a ton of the arena as of this moment. I have gotten like mostly unique pieces. I would say of them all, what is the most ridiculous I have? I do have the Jags triple damage, which I got this morning.
We can come back to you. I can ask Gprime.
What's Gprime's most?
Let's start with tech. I can't even think right now. Well, I'll look for my collection.
Stalker gloves.
The 4 Stalker gloves. I think that was what I was going to go with.
Yeah, your Huntresses have then create a fox pet for each ruby threshold you have. But they have, at the end of your turn, sacrifice this.
Yes. So
that one's absolutely ridiculous, and you can blow out the AI on turn 4 so often.
Well, and it's interesting because Sly Huntress is a 2/3 for 4 with a single ruby threshold, and she creates a 1/3 fox pet with speed.
1/2.
A 1/2. Sorry, I don't think I've ever. Is it a 1/2? Yeah, it is a 1/2. Yeah, it's weird. Well, the defense doesn't really matter. The fox has speed, and normally it's not a fantastic card. It's pretty strong in draft, I would say. Like, I've started to enjoy having it as long as I have like 1 or 2 pieces of Inspire. Because, of note, the Sly Huntress herself is cost 4, and the Fox Pet is cost 3, so it gets inspired by most of the notable inspired troops like Cerulean Mirror Knight, both of the Pyromancers, Jags himself, and Cerulean Mentalist, which is essentially the deck I have here called The Fox Says Whoa, because it's very exciting to do this. I think the best part of that equipment is it takes Sly Huntress and it makes her into an insane card. Not just a regular, 'cause she's a common. It doesn't just make her better, it makes her like really good, like build a deck around her good. If you have a Cerulean Mirror Knight and a Cerulean Mentalist out, and on turn 4 you have 3 ruby resource and you play 3 ruby threshold, and you play a Sly Huntress, you create the original Fox Pet, 3 additional Fox Pets, you swing, any of them that deal damage draw a card, and then they all sacrifice themselves at the end of the turn, so you draw 4 more cards. So you can cycle through your deck very quickly. I included a couple of Burn to the Grounds as finishers for reach, and it's incredibly fun.
Yeah, to point out that, it's a common card in Shattered Destiny Set 2.
Yeah, it's nothing like you normally go like, oh!
You would never make the cut for a constructed deck normally. It wouldn't make the cut.
No.
But with this,
because Royal Falconer's there. Royal Falconer is sitting in that spot, and why would you ever not take Royal Falconer?
But with this uncommon piece of equipment, it makes it a win condition. Makes it like the bomb that it isn't matched anywhere else right now that I'm aware of.
I would say that there's more powerful things. It's not necessarily like the most powerful card or piece of equipment, but it is pretty cool, and it's certainly the one that it is the one that I'm the most excited about. Did you have one in your head, Mr. Gprime?
There's one that I think I probably earned today. It's not quite as amazeballs powerful as the Huntress is there, but the Feral Root Slippers for the Wild Root Dancer, I kind of actually want to try the Wild Root Dancer now in the Hired Horn Sellsword slot in that charge deck, because it gives it the ability that the Naiad has, where you can play an additional resource on each of your turns. So making it into both a +2/+2 plus a potential extra resource, extra charge, kind of adds quite a lot to that deck. Being able to play another resource plus giving like your Gore Master +2/+2 to crush in through, or anything else really. It seems to be quite powerful with that deck in particular.
Yes. It's actually my first fully equipped deck uses those. Sadly, they're bugged right now, so I don't feel very good playing it. They are bugged in your favor.
Okay.
When you play a dual resource, it actually triggers your Wild Root Dancer twice. And I was absolutely terrified the first time I saw that.
Yeah.
And I had to rush. I was in the middle of a stream. I rushed off to test it to make sure that it wasn't broken for the Sapphire Cup. No, but I got, it was one of my first pieces of equipment. I got that and the Archmage Renlock's legendary chest plate. Not the cool the hand guards, because they were not dropping until yesterday.
Right.
In this time, 5 days ago or so now when you're listening. Archmage Renlock simply gains +1/+1 when you draw when you play an action with this chest plate, which is actually really good. And I created a deck that I called Dance Dance Revolution. I've created a couple of decks called that over my time in Hex. It's such a good name because this is, in particular, this deck works really well with it. It was some Oakench Ceremonies, Chlorophilia, and then 4 Spirit Dances, which have an equipment that reduce the cost of it by 2. So 3 cost Spirit Dance instead of 5, which is incredibly notable.
Oh yeah.
Some Munario Sensei, and then the backup singers, Mentor of the Song, the Wild Root Dancers, Dream Dance, Spirit Dance. The theme was for the stream mostly, and it was pretty funny. Archmage Renlock. I think I put 2 Eye of Creation in, and then Mentor of the Oakench. Both of the mentors created a way for me to either charge things up with the Wild Root Dancer's fancy footwork, or to get actions to charge up Archmage Renlock. Archmage Renlock, in turn, gave me the ability to draw extra cards, and, once the dance started, I could go through the deck incredibly quickly.
I take it that you built this deck by just typing the word dance into the card collection screen.
I kind of got, like, Archmage Renlock, the Wild Root Dancer, and the Wrathwood Colossus equipment all at once. So I've had a deck very similar to that. So I basically rebuilt it. Since then, I've taken the Wild Root Dancers out, and I've put in Corey's daughter, Holiday, the psychic cookie salesman.
Right.
4 of her with both of her pieces of equipment. Hood of the Holiday Feast, and the... I believe it's the Celebratory Gloves. The Celebratory Gloves make it so that the first time you exhaust Holiday as Holiday to use her power, you either choose to give her, like, the next thing that she transforms into +1 or +2. In fact, that's like permanently her new ability. And the hood of the Holiday Feast kind of ties in with everything. When she becomes exhausted, you put a random Holiday from your deck into your hand. If you've ever fought Corey in Tier 3 or 4, he has that equipment. I'm not sure about Tier 2.
So
that sounds like fun.
So, yeah, Holiday card is nice, but I really can't fit it into my decks without the equipment. I really need the equipment.
Yeah,
it doesn't fit well.
The thing is that I found is, even with the equipment, which I'm basically running her at this point to go, like, look, I have a fully equipped running deer. Woo! It's not that she's bad. Like, there are times where you flip her and it's like, oh, I've got fully evolved Hop Hero. This is a good time. The issue is mostly that you can't attack with and exhaust her, so a lot of the times with the rest of the deck that I've built, you're building everything else up so fast that, Holiday might as well just be Holiday.
Just kind of gets left behind.
Yeah. That being said, it is a very fun deck, and it goes to point out that, well, we did talk about a couple of absolutely destroy and speedrun the arena decks. You can run fun decks as well, and that's really awesome. Soul Cube, a legendary card that drops, is very fun to play with. Uranaz's legendary The Leeching Burrower drops. When you defeat Uranaz, the fairly rare, I don't want to say exceedingly rare, because most people I know have fought him at least once now. Although a lot of people talking in my stream didn't. I don't know.
It seems like it might be a case of you're only hearing the people who have encountered him instead of
Yeah,
people
it
that
might
have.
be observation bias, but like in our test group of 15, like 14 people have played him.
That hurts
Well,
so
it's
bad.
not- It's not 14. 'cause
I am jealous.
You haven't. I know Chris hasn't. I think Coach hasn't. Tim isn't playing, but like more than 10, kind of thing.
You guys just play a lot. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it might have just been that we played it a lot, but like I only played probably 10 Arena, which is a lot. But when you gather that I played it like 4 or 5 times on stream,
Yeah.
and I was playing it while Infamous Neo was streaming, and we were talking about how exciting it was to be playing.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Could you encounter Unos during the test?
Yes.
Okay.
If you'd listened to last week's podcast, you would know that I actually did encounter it.
Very good.
And I believe they actually raised the chance to see Corey from rare to he's just part of the boss pool now.
It seems that way, yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell that was... I think you can tell that wasn't always going to be the case, because when you defeat Corey, the little shadowed background at the top of the arena is red. And the only other card or champion challenger who does that is actually Uranaz. And I think, more often than not, you actually fought Corey as just a regular... Nah, I might be making that up. I played a lot of it, so it all kind of blended together.
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting that you touch on that the arena is so flexible and modular in design that they can add champions, take away champions. Speaking of which, they did take away a champion that was bugged this week.
The Lunario Sensei.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was locking up a lot of people's games.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. Because it was locking up in totally different phases and situations than... Like, it would lock up for me during... It never locked up on me, but I'm using myself as an example here. When I was passing priority to them, and for other people it would lock up after they used his charge power, or so forth and so forth, which was really weird.
It was some type of weird hang-up condition that I don't know. Have to ask the programmers and Chris Woods.
And when that happened, it technically meant you won, because it always hung up on his move, and you could just AFK for 15 minutes at that point, because after 15 minutes of the AI not making a move, it actually concedes to you.
Interesting.
Yeah, or at least that's how it was explained in chat today.
Okay.
I'm not actually... I don't quote me on that, but it is how it is. Yeah, it wasn't fun, so they took it out. I'm sure he'll be back when the programmers address what the problem is and things move on. Now, I wanted to talk a bit about other parts of the arena. Some PvE cards came out, which is very exciting. I, for one, will be the first to say that I'm kind of sad at the number of PvE cards. And, anybody who listened to last week's podcast can tell you I'm like the number one Hex fanboy of all time. I cannot stress to people how much I love this game. But when it comes to the first set that was available, we were introduced to 350 cards. We were told, here you go, have fun. We had an ocean to play around with. PvE cards, we've got about 50, I think it is. I'm not...
I want to say... Let me count real quick.
Well, I mean, you could do that, I suppose.
26?
Is it 26? Ooh.
Is that counting the chest rewards that we haven't gotten yet, and also the Wheel of Fate stuff?
No, it's not. It might be counting Wheel of Fate stuff.
Yeah,
I think it's actually more than that. A lot of PvE cards can only be played by the computer. Like certain champions have.
Yeah, so ownable, I believe it's 26.
Okay,
for this set of the release, or I guess what they would consider still part of set 1.
Yeah, and a large part of that is being that this is just a temporary PvE release, and
it's almost like a teaser.
Yeah, it's a teaser basically. And I'm not sad because I think that they could have done more or anything like that. I'm mostly just sad because it's like I wanted more. I was so anticipating more.
Just hoping that once PvE the first wave of dungeons comes out, it's got to be like at least a
so
small
much
set
to
worth.
collect.
Yeah.
You know, like I was like, oh, I can't wait to collect this and this and this. And turns out, there's.
Oh,
well, I mean, the equipment's fine. And they mentioned something along the lines of, like, they can add 10 equipment next week, and the patch will take 5 seconds to go through, and everybody will be happy. Like, equipment is not a big deal. But yeah, like, collecting stuff is a huge part of the game to me. And that's cool. Going on to collecting stuff, and this is the topic I wanted to mention that I think is going to leave a little bit of a sour taste in Tecnophi's mouth, is a week ago, the Killipede on the auction house was somewhere around 1,100 platinum. And it was at that price because it's a really cool card. People want to play with the Killipede, and it is not necessarily super-de-duper crazy. But recently somebody bought them all up, and yesterday the only ones on the auction house were like 2,100 plat. They've come way down since then. It looks like a bunch of people have started listing them again, and now they're down to 900. But the market fluctuated really hard on the Killipede, and as such, it's easy to look at this PVE and go, oh, things are going to change. Gore Master, the deck that we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, on the off chance you hadn't heard about it before, is a fairly cheap card most of the time. Like, it was never more than like $1 of a rare, I think. It saw some price hike for the Ruby Cup. It's now sitting...
Yeah, it performed really well in the Diamond Cup, so that
did The Diamond Cup, yeah.
So it's like a $2 or $3 card normally.
Yeah, well, now it's sitting at a base price of 2.9. And, it's just going up a little bit. The arena is going to affect cards' value that aren't necessarily PvP playable, even when they're PvP cards. And I think that's hilariously fantastic. It's good for the PvPers.
Oh, yeah.
It's good for the PvEers. And it's good for the free-to-players, because your free-to-player players coming in here might actually get a stash item out of the arena that's worth something that they can then go and draft with if they want. A lot of the arena equipment right now, which you can get anywhere from 3 to 12 pieces in a run, is on the auction house for anywhere between 30 plat to 500 plat, which is a lot of plat for a piece of equipment. You only ever need one piece of equipment, and then you go. And Tecnophi, you were like, when I mentioned this on stream the other day, you were like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But nobody got PvE. Yeah, nobody got PvE good cards ready to go. Well, like, nobody set up for this in advance.
That's true, but a lot of the cards are influenced by the equipment that you can pick up for the card. And a lot of the equipment we did not know.
That's true. And a lot of the equipment that actually made live servers are considerably different than...
what was on the test servers.
Yeah. Archmage Renlock has 2 pieces of equipment for him right now, sitting at about $7, which I think is higher than normal. But yeah, I mean, it changes how people who buy and sell cards have to look at things, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it certainly could settle out, because it's only been like 4 or 5 days currently since the arena has come out. But in the meantime, if you are actually coming into the game as a free-to-player right now, it is viable.
Yeah. Absolutely is.
I would have to say that I think it's going to take a long time for the prices on those type of cards and equipment to level out. Considering the amount of players,
influx of players is going to be insane.
Influx of new PvE content that may make some cards more viable or less viable.
The 12 dungeons that are on their way, not immediately. I mean, we have set 3 coming soon, and then, well, not soon, coming, and then the 12 dungeons. It's going to be crazy.
And then, like 5 shards tournaments and like HexTech tournaments influence the usual PvP stuff. So,
yeah, and as a nice segue, we could rant on about the arena, and we might come back to it for a little bit. Speaking of new players coming into the game, there has never been a better time. Not only is PvE finally available, but in this Friday's update, Hex and Gameforge, Cryptozoic and Gameforge, have gathered together, and they've partnered up to run the first large prize tournament for Hex Shards of Fate, and it'll take place this year, apparently. Gameforge first announced this tournament earlier at the Intel Extreme Masters at Katowice, Poland. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm sorry. The tournament will host over $100,000 in prize money. All registered players that play on the North American and European servers of Hex of Fate will have a chance to take part in ranked tournaments on a regular basis to earn qualifier points. More details to follow. It's possible by the time you hear this, there will be more details.
So let's
emphasize
as
of right now.
1 with 5 zeros behind it.
Well, 2 zeros, a comma, and then 3 more zeros if you're being correct.
It all depends on what country you're from. Some
comma.
countries use the comma to separate parts.
Yes, I
instead
know.
of...
I was trying to incite that argument
Okay,
as well.
very good.
Now, that doesn't mean that first place gets $100,000. It's kind of separate to that entire thing. It's a prize pool of that much.
But it's still quite a lot. Like, if first place is only a quarter of that, $25,000, that's still a lot of money, especially for a game that's still the size of Hex, and I'm sure it could grow
and
quite considerably by the time.
Begin.
Oh yeah, like no kidding. But at least for now, and for what I can imagine for the next year, which I believe is probably going to be how long it takes for this first tournament to come to light, that's still quite a large per capita amount. Like $100,000 for, I don't know, how many people do you figure Hex has right now? Like in the thousands?
It's hard for me to... I think it's hard for anyone outside of them to say that number. Like, it's... Because, like, it's a lot of observation bias, because, like, the most I see of the community is mostly, like, Twitch and Reddit and 5 Shards comment related, and that's kind of...
pretty small community.
Well, it's not a pretty small community. It's actually a fairly large community, but it's a small chunk. Yeah, it's a small chunk of what's actually in the game.
Not everyone's
I've seen tons of new names in there.
Yeah, but let's look at stuff like when they tried to do the last large tournament on the test server. So on that Saturday, I think it was, March 6th? They had like 750 players sign up for that. Of course, it crashed the test servers. They got good data. They're working on it. But 750 players signing up for one tournament.
On a server that was... I mean, you had to download separately. You had to download ahead of time. You had to be aware of the tournament to be on that server.
You had to have had
You had to be
February
registered
1st.
before February 2nd.
Was it 2nd? Okay.
Well, February 2nd was the cutoff.
Right.
If you created one on February 1st, 23:59, you'd be okay. PDT or PST at the time. That would be okay. And they still managed to get 700 people plus, and that's fantastic. And, you know, just to touch in on something real quick, the Blood Cup had 151?
Yes, 151.
Which is pretty decent. And then currently signed up for the Sapphire Cup, which, and this number always swells before the date of, and you'll know a hard number by the time this comes out, is 145, which is amazing. Like, we're very happy with those numbers. And it's entirely possible that they will just absolutely annihilate with this kind of incentive to now come in and show your stuff. Yeah. It's going to light up the game in a positive way, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, when Corey said last week that he was aiming to have like the largest single like online tournament, I think he can make it. I think he can do it.
Oh, at this pace, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because all of these qualifying tournaments and ranked tournaments, obviously we don't have any more information, but I hope that they are varied in constructed and limited and whatever, and they can get all of this together. And I cannot wait to see how this progresses. And I hope that when I fail to actually qualify and they're looking for a shoutcaster, Corey remembers me from last week. I hope so. God, that's a dream.
Yep.
Remember the message, just LinkedIn.
Yeah, just message his LinkedIn. That's the way to get it done. And I think there's not a whole lot more to say about it. It's cool. It's exciting. It's coming out.
Yep.
For some reason, they decided to use a picture of the Avenging Angel from the Frost Arena as a header image for the $100,000 tournament in their Friday update. I just want to point out that seems like a really weird heading image, although a super cool one. And you got to pick on something,
sure.
right?
I do think though that this may possibly be hinting towards our first HexCon, because what better place would there be to hold the championship than at their first big convention?
And that's if they choose to hold the championship in person, which there's a very strong chance of that happening.
We can touch on that a little bit, because with that amount of prize pool, I would expect an in-person event. Nothing's confirmed. We have no idea right now. But with that amount of money, I think they'll probably have an in-person event.
Yeah.
If not, some type of broadcast of it.
The other thing is this going to have them finally... If constructed tournaments start happening as part of this, are they going to start cracking down on constructed bugs?
I hope so.
Because it's very difficult to have qualifying tournaments and not expect people to abuse bugs and then feign ignorance.
But
I didn't know Grave Nibbler was bugged. I'm sorry.
But look at the latest patch, and we're going to be running the Sapphire Cup tomorrow. We didn't actually have to consider and ban too many cards at the moment.
Yeah, well, we had 2 days to figure out what cards needed to be banned, and most people spent their time in the arena, so we have no idea how most cards play in Constructed right now. But yeah, I mean, it's looked great. The optimistic side of me wants to say that a lot of things were fixed, and they were. All of the serious bugs, I believe, from the last patch were addressed. Incantation of Fury got a new bug, but Incantation of Fury, and I believe Ascendance is also bugged and doesn't transform. Hopefully somebody mentioned that to Mike. I mean, it should be in the known issues. The incantations had a change in the patch notes to the way that they interact and work, so it's very possible that, Incantation of Fury, which is a fairly low-played card, just didn't really see the proper playtesting that it needed to or whatever, and everything else has seemed pretty good. Colin's son, the Highlands Shinobi, does have a pretty serious lockup related to it, but that's just what it is. Like, it's a very rare scenario for that to happen, although it happened to me the day of the patch, which was great. And I'm glad I caught it, but I don't think anyone would have caught that one for a long time if it hadn't have been that exact scenario.
Yeah, so. I don't think that scenario would show up very often, so there may be fringe bugs and issues like that.
Yeah, exactly. For anyone wondering, Highland Shinobi got a change to the way it works. Not necessarily a nerf or a change, but the card is now working as it was intended, and it can now only exhaust opposing troops. And if you use Crackling Bolt to gain a charge and kill your opponent's last troop, or Crackling Rod, or anything of the like, you lock up the game because you no longer have a target.
I'm wondering if even before this patch, if there's a situation where you could concoct that would also have your troops die as you kill your opponent's troops, so you couldn't even target your own troops, if that same lockup would have happened before. Much harder to replicate than this particular version of the bug, but
yeah, it's interesting and weird. All of that together, all of that going on, more tournaments, awesome. More arena, more content, awesome and awesome and awesome.
So segue on to our next topic. One of the ranked tournaments could be sealed, you think?
If they're using sealed for VIP now, and they were looking for something to replace VIP in the near future, it seems like that might be somewhere where they go where occasionally
they need a better system than it. Like, they need a more intricate system than if you 4-0 you get this. Although maybe that'll work for the case. Like, if you want to get an accurate assessment of rating and such, you would want that to be like... you would want that to be something like you cut to a top 8, or, you know, you have another 8-man pool segment at the top, or so forth and so forth. But that does actually, as much as Tecnophi wanted to derail things, lead into the other subject that I kind of wanted to talk about today, because we've been saying we're going to talk about Sealed for a while, and I know Mike has a couple of topics to do and talk about with that, but he was convinced that we wouldn't have anything to talk about because he hadn't come up with topics. But I was listening to the Threshold podcast earlier, and they touched on how much of draft they think is luck versus skill. And I'm going to blatantly and shamelessly touch on that subject in Sealed, but not quite in the same way they did. I think they had a poll, and they were talking specifically about draft. And we're going to talk about something in Sealed that particularly, it's one of the reasons I stay away from Sealed. And it's kind of funny because if you watch my stream, I make a lot of jokes. I always tell people stay lucky and all of that. I cannot stand opening a bad Sealed pool. I hate opening a bad Sealed pool with every fiber of my being. You pay $12 at $2 a pack. Obviously, you're not going in on that. And then the Sealed entry to look at your cards and realize that your deck is suboptimal. Sometimes you look at your deck and you go, how could I lose? There's no way this deck could lose. And you're usually right if you have that thought. And I wanted to pose to you, Will, do you think there's more luck in Sealed than there is in Draft?
I think there's no doubt that there's more luck in Sealed than there is in Draft, but I don't think it's quite as disparate as people think it is, because still taking a pool of 6 packs worth of cards and building a solid deck is a skill. And when it comes to Draft, a lot of the times it comes down to, okay, in this pack, the best card for the shard combination that I've decided on is this card. That's what I'm picking. When it comes to Sealed, there's a whole lot more nuance in deciding where you want to go. So at least in that, losing the draft strategy, you are gaining a little bit of difficulty in the deck building itself. I think that does keep it a little bit closer to draft in skill level than people tend to give it credit for.
Yeah, so in Sealed, I do see the skill of deck building really shines through. Like, in Draft, you kind of already usually go in with, say, hey, that is a really neat card, or hey, this is a good run of cards that I got put together, so I'm going to build this type of deck. Mm-hmm. In Sealed, you're throwing everything at once, and you have to put together what you think is the best combination of the cards.
I suppose I'm fairly confident in my deck building skills. I'm fairly confident in my ability to look at a pile of cards, and so I guess maybe that's where I kind of fall off of this train.
Sure.
And I look at this and I go, well, actually, like, I think that there's a lot of skill involved in the drafting process, and a lot of people don't really appreciate the nuances there. In Draft, you look at your first pick, and we talk about our first pick a lot on this show. We draft from a pack at the end of every podcast. And, you know, some people might like that segment, some people might not. It's always there. You know it's coming, and it's always at the end. So it's not like it surprises anyone, but we talk a lot about every card in the pack when we want to, and we usually have very diverse first picks. And we're probably going to do it again today. And the fun of that is that you get to look at your first pack and make a decision. Is there too much blood in this pack? Is there too much? Is this rare actually worth it? Is this card good enough to take now, even though I don't have the supporting cards? Somebody beat me yesterday with this card. Do I take it? And then, more importantly, 7 picks later, you get to look at that pack again. And you get to say, oh, this card made it around, but I thought that it was going to go. And I know that in the next pack, there's a one of these. And if I get past that, I can take this. And some people call that luck and some people call that skill, but if you take the first card hoping to get that next card that you remembered was there, memory is a skill.
Yep.
So
memory is something you can train and get used to.
One of the big differences between like sealed and draft, among many things, is draft you actually start playing against your opponent the first card you pick.
Yep.
Yeah. And you end up fighting over things because you're playing against 7 other players, and technically you're in a circle, and you have to realize that, oh, I'm not getting any of these. That guy's taking them to my right. And then you remember, maybe not that guy to your right, but the guy 2 spots to your right, or the guy 3 spots to your right. Not too much farther down the table, though, because a couple of picks ago you got this. And you have to fight different tropes and archetypes, and you have to not marry your first pick, and you have to make sure you pick up something you want to, and sometimes you have to make the very difficult decision of taking something that you will never use in your deck just so that guy doesn't get them.
Yeah, so how I kind of see, like, sealed versus draft is, draft, everyone starts off with, like, a theoretical, let's say,
that's
100%.
That's the first round of the game,
yeah,
right?
the first round of the game. 100% deck, right? Like, the top deck, 100 points. And it can only go down from there. Everyone has kind of the same pool. I guess, the first pick is slightly different, but overall, people kind of, like, have the deck in a certain range that are pretty equal to each other. In sealed, you're given 6 packs, and everyone's going to have, like, a different one. You might start with, like, a 60 deck, and the guy that you're going to face had a 6 packs, and it could be considered like an 80-90 easily. There is luck involved in, like, the pool of cards and what you can, like, theoretically put together if you had to rate it. But it's still a skill to realize that and put it together in sealed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Are you guys are still there? I think everything will still be fine since we're recording locally. But on the off chance that I drop, something just crushed my internet there for a second, and I'm not sure what.
I heard all that too. It was all around, but we're still good.
I think the internet had problems. Like you guys listening to the podcast won't know this because Elysian will have not fixed. The audio will never have been distorted, but we all just heard robot voice Tecnophi for a second there. Oh
darn! You guys caught me.
Yeah. Wow. Haha. He's a robot. I get +1/+1 when he enters play. Now, I just upgraded a chest to legendary. I opened a pack to take a screenshot for the draft segment that we're going to get to here in a second. It had a rare chest in it. I rolled it, upgraded to a legendary. Nice. It's good times. Totally unrelated.
Give me your gold.
To go back, I think that sealed is considerably more luck than draft. I honestly believe that you walk in there, first of all, having paid more to play less, which is something that I'm not a big fan of. You are building out of your pool the best you can. You're building in a totally different way. You're building around your bombs instead of drafting consistency. And I'm not saying that every draft is all about all about consistency, but to some extent, if you play 100 drafts, you want to be as consistent as possible, and that often means taking the best cards that you can in every situation and doing your best to make the most consistent deck. You have to worry about your curve, you have to worry about what shards you're in, you have to worry about what shards they're in. And in sealed, you go in and you look at, okay, I've got 3 murders and 2 crackling rots. That's pretty good. How did I get 3 murders? I only opened 2 set 1 packs. Oh, well, let's ignore that for a second. And, I also have a Killipede. Or you look at your blood, you see that that's all that's there, and you splash for it. There's different issues there. And, I mean, the deck building is a totally different skill. And, yes, it is like that, but you skip the one-ish hour draft session and you go right into deck building.
Well,
and the cards are already there.
So what if we consider this being Hex and being a digital format, that, let's say in an 8-man sealed, everyone gets the same 6 packs. I doubt they'll ever do that due to pricing and like.
I think it's
like
kind of boring, to be honest, because if you know everything that your
boring.
opponents have, if you know that everything they have available, everyone's going to have similar decks, or at least most people should have similar decks. People might decide to go different directions based on their playstyle or just what they happen to notice in the packs. But it would just be kind of boring, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a very serious topic about sealed, and we will get more into that next week, but I just wanted to touch base that it's kind of why I stick away from sealed. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Sealed is more expensive, and no matter which way you cut the apple, sealed is more expensive.
Yeah, I know for me,
by double.
I only play sealed when it's a release celebration or the VIP sealed tournaments.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know about
exactly
you
it
guys.
for me too. Just VIPs.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people who are very, very, very excited about every scheduled sealed that goes around. Like, they only get like 20 people most of the time right now, but the scheduled sealed payouts are pretty good.
That's exactly why, because scheduled sealed does have a very good value compared to the other tournaments, and people are going to want to take advantage of that anytime they can.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something like 13 packs for, I don't know what the entry is, but it's not enough to dissuade somebody. Right. And even the regular Swiss queue is you win 6 packs at the cost of, if you already have the packs at 200 plat entry. But, it's got its ups and downs. We are going to draft from a pack, just to touch base and finish things off for today. I realize it's a much shorter podcast than the last couple of weeks have been, but there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the Sapphire Cup is happening tomorrow in my time, and I have to be ready to shoutcast for 9 hours, and Tecnophi has to be ready to do technical work for 9 hours, and Will only has to be around for 2 hours. Now, this is a joke. This is a joke because I'm implying that he'll show up and lose the first 2 rounds and scrub out.
Whereas last tournament, I entered, lost the first 2 rounds, and stubbornly kept playing all day for the entire tournament. Which is good. And then went and ate a whole avocado. Yeah. Now, there's a pack link in the show notes if you guys want to open that. And I would like to point out that I opened the pack for our discussion with Corey last week, and I got a legendary. I got a Prince Talysen. And I did it again, which is kind of frustrating, actually, because I already have my playset of Prince Talysen, and I'm just like, meh. But for the sake, we're not going to replace him this time. For the sake of you people at home, the pack we are looking at is the legendary Prince Talysen, the uncommon Fierce Warlord, the uncommon Wazakashi Ambusher, and the uncommon Exalted Victory. All 3 of which are cards that kind of fit in well with the arena theme. Then our commons are Dragon Guard Stalwart, To the Skies, Rune Ear Burrower, Compost, Burrow Bunny, Firesoul Wizard, the Vanguard of Cerulea, Charge Hulk, which is Charge Hulk in not Canadian, Flak Scrapper, Grave Nibbler, and Adrenaline Rush. Tecnophi, what would your first pick in this pack be? Are we all taking Prince Talysen first? I don't think I am. You know what? I think it's probably the right decision value-wise, because it's worth about $250. Yeah. But at the same time,
let's ignore him. Let's ignore Prince Talysen. Let's table him, because most of the times when you open a legendary in Hex, it's worth taking anyway, because it's almost exclusively worth at least a pack. And if you get a third of your value back at the cost of 1 pick in draft, that's all. I can't imagine there's a case where you can justify not doing that until we see queues that have more competitive.
Okay, so imagine that the $100,000 tournament, you're at the final 8 pod table, you open this pack.
Not taking
we take Prince Talysen because nobody's expecting it.
No, I was totally not taking it. You kidding?
Yeah, that there's no way. But yeah, technically, what card in this pack do you take?
Wazakashi Ambusher.
The which?
The Ambusher.
Wazakashi.
Wazakashi.
Yeah, I know. I was Wazakashi Ambusher. And is there any particular reason that you favor him over other cards, or is that just...
Quite often you can easily 2-for-1, and if you go bunnies, it's a great card to have. There are a lot of other options in here, but I feel like a lot of the other options are more developmental picks, and the Ambusher, I feel, is like almost a bomb.
Huh?
Yeah. The Wakazashi's really good at being removal and a troop, which is
Anytime
nice.
you can have that, it's golden.
Yeah. Do you have a second pick?
Second pick, if I didn't have Prince Talysen and I didn't have the Ambusher, I probably look towards the Charge
Would you
Hulk.
take the Prince Talysen here as your...
Second pick?
Again, if you were at the $100,000 table.
I would have had to pick up a really good Ruby card, probably, and then I would pick him second.
Name a Ruby card in set 2 that you would pick and then follow up with Prince Talysen. Crackling Bolt's the best Ruby common I can think of.
Yeah, Crackling Bolt if there was no other good options, as well as possibly Boulder Toss.
I'd probably take him to follow up like a...
Well, but Boulder Toss doesn't work with Prince Talysen.
I don't care. Boulder Toss is Boulder Toss. You need a reason for Boulder Toss?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this a couple of times on the last few podcasts. Actually, I think Boulder Toss is not as good and limited as people are giving it credit for.
Okay, fair enough.
It's removal, but it's removal that has a double threshold. It's susceptible to the removal of your troop as a 2-for-1. And there are not many troops with high enough attack to take advantage of it, other than Mesmer Hypnoscientist and maybe Firesoul Wizard.
I disagree, because I tend to run Flynn more than Giles. I feel Flynn is the more solid pick.
Yeah, that's fair. But if you grab that, you would take Prince Talysen. Okay, so what's your other second pick?
So my second pick probably would be Charge Hulk out of this pack. Charge Hulk's solid, it's a pretty good pick. You'll probably find a good use out of it.
Okay. And swapping over to Will for a moment, what are your first and second choices out of this
First
pack?
is Wakazashi. I mean, you probably got my agreement with Tech already when he said that. Second, I do like the Charge Hulk. Like Tech says, it's kind of shard agnostic. It lets you go anywhere you want from here. But at the same time, I feel like I kind of want to go somewhere with this pack where I want to cut people out of an archetype, and I see that Flak Scrapper is kind of an opportunity to do that. Seeing the Compost in the same pack kind of scares me a little bit, because I know that the wild guy is going to get that, and he's going to side it in against me. I'm going to be really sad if I play that Dwarf Robot deck. But Charge Hulk himself, anyone's going to grab that. They're not going to see that and say, hey, let's go that Dwarf Robot deck. Flak Scrapper is the only card in here that really, really pushes towards that, and I've been having so much success with that archetype lately that I think I'd just go Flak Scrapper, second pick here.
Okay, and if you had to take a third card?
That would... Now, I'm already in the mindset of robots, so I'm looking at that Charge Hulk and thinking, yeah, that's the pick, but I think I probably would actually end up going with Rune Ear Burrower, I think. Because there are other Shinhair in this deck, but there's none that are... No, then the Wakazashi. No, I wouldn't take it. I'd probably take the Vanguard of Cerulea.
Interesting. Vanguard of Cerulea.
It's 2 damage in the air, and in this set, that's pretty handy.
Yeah, and in this draft format, it's
but
very difficult to go around.
I do find humans is usually hotly contested, so I'm not a fan of it as much recently. And also, like, taking Vanguards, it kind of, like, fits you into that shard type already.
Oh, it sure does, but usually there's enough in those 3 shards to support it for sure.
Except that, do you see any other Sapphire cards in this deck?
No, but I see other cards in Ruby and Diamond that I'd be happy to get the Firesoul Wizard. I would be super happy to get the Exalted Victory back, though I doubt that would happen. Adrenaline Rush I'd be fine with. To the Skies I'd be okay with. If I had to take the Dragon Guard Stalwart, that's actually a pretty solid card against early aggression if you're playing kind of a later game style deck. So yeah, I'd be pretty much okay with that too. And Charge Hulk, like I said, works good with almost anything.
Okay. On the flip side, on the catch side, ignoring the Prince Talysen, who I don't think I take until like 4th or 5th pick. I might take him early, because I think he's pretty decent if you have a way to force him, but it's hard to force him. The Wazakashi Ambusher is my first pick, like both Will and Tien here. Wazakashi Ambusher is a lowly little 2-1, but he enables an archetype that I love. He enables a second archetype I love. First of all, he enables Shinhair Swarm. Second of all, he enables Benoshi Nonsense. I think I have drafted Benoshi Nonsense on stream 1,000 times now.
That's a good number.
It might be getting closer to 6,000 or 7,000. But I cannot stay away from it, and I keep getting past the cards for it. So I'm like, okay. Fierce Warlord, the uncommon we didn't touch on much, is a 2/1 for 2, double ruby threshold, and it gives all of your 1-cost troops +1/+1 when it hits the board. And unfortunately, there's not enough 1-cost troops to really justify it. You would never take the Fierce Warlord and hope to get those 1-cost troops. You would take the 1-cost troops and then never wheel the Fierce Warlord, which tends to happen. I think it's a little bit of a trap, and it doesn't have as good of a payout as my second pick, which is Exalted Victory. Now, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna take Exalted Victory knowing it does two things. First of all, it potentially opens up a whole archetype to me. Having Exalted Victory means I can get subpar humans and still have a late game finisher, and humans are fantastic at stalling in 2-2-1. Not only do they have the big clunky humans like Dragonguard Stalwart, which I don't necessarily play as often as Will does, but they do have things like the Swift Strike Vanguard of Gawain, the big-butted Vanguard of Cerulea, the Swift Strike Firesoul Wizard, the Royal Enforcers, so many humans that can't always attack because you're afraid of losing them, but can very often attack once you play your 4-cost action that gives them all +2 attack, Steadfast, and Swift Strike for the turn. And
But
not
the
only
plus
does
two
it
attack
not only does it
gives it to any troop, so it doesn't have to be
yes. Thank you for saying the thing I was gonna say. I appreciate it so much, Jen.
Thank you.
You saved me.
I'll be here all weekend.
I hope not. Well, you will be.
I will be.
Actually, I do hope that you're here. Forgive me. I'm sorry.
You better be sorry.
Now, Exalted Victory, like you say, really only means one thing. I need to have a diamond resource. Otherwise, I can just keep taking it. The +2 attack works well in Diamond Wild. People ignore that one a lot, but Diamond Wild is still going and raring and hot, and that's pretty awesome. And the biggest reason that I'm taking Exalted Victory second is much like a second reason that I took Wazakashi Ambusher first, is I don't want to see it played against me.
That's true.
That turns 3 cards into lethal. Charge Hulk, I'm annoyed. Vanguard of Cerulea, I'm annoyed. Flak Scrapper, he sacrificed an artifact to get my dude. Exalted Victory, oh crap. I'm dead. You know, like maybe I have an answer to that, but 9 times out of 10 it changes combat math, which is one of the biggest things in the game, and it changes it on a board-wide scale. The only downside to Exalted Victory, of course, being that it's a basic action and you cannot use it defensively.
Which can be pretty big. I mean, you could be holding an Exalted Victory just waiting for that chance to do that damage, and your opponent's, I don't care, I'm just going to keep on smacking you down.
Yep. Which is why at that point I have to shift into human troops. I have to make sure I have flight defense, and I have to make sure that I have ground defense, and then everything past that is bombs and happiness. The rest of the commons are kind of easy for me to glaze over. The Rune Ear Burrower, Rune Ear Burrower has always had a place in my heart as the Rune Ear commander's, like, lore cousin. He exists to show that sometimes we paint runes onto the ears of bunnies and call them Rune Ears. But other than that, he's just kind of like a torch-bearing sap who you tunnel and you hope to get a bunch of troops out before he surfaces. The problem is he doesn't have a surfacing benefit, first off. Second off, you need to then alter the way you play for 2 turns.
That is a good point.
And that's the exact opposite of what you want from a tunneling card. When you tunnel a card, your opponent should go, oh, now I have to react this way, or this way. Not you go, oh, I have to make sure that in the next turn or 2 I play my surprise runt gang. Compost is easily ignorable this early on. Burrow Bunny is easily ignorable this early on unless my first 2 picks were super aggressive. Firesoul Wizard is a nice pickup, but if I'm going to take Firesoul Wizard, I still value Exalted Victory more. Same with Adrenaline Rush, Vanguard of Cerulea, and well, that cuts those cards out of the pack for me. Charge Hulk is 2 charges and, like you guys have said, fits into any deck and was originally my 3rd pick. Originally my 3rd pick. But I can't really look at it and be super excited about it, especially when I know that, like, it's not going to come around. Charge Hulk never comes around. People always take it because it's so versatile, so that's not a big deal. Flak Scrapper's in there, Adrenaline Rush is in there. But the other card I see is Grave Nibbler. Now that he's not bugged, Grave Nibbler
is he fixed?
Super good at doing... Yeah, he's fixed.
That would be good to know.
And he does a couple of awesome things. He's a 2/2 for 2. I know, a lot of people forget this. He has a cool tunneling effect, and he becomes a 4/4 if a troop dies while he's tunneled. But he's a tunneling troop that's actually just a 2/2 for 2. So you can play him and sacrifice him to Benoshi. I know, I abuse Benoshi way too much. And you can use him as a stab in the dark, like early defense, 2/2. Or you can slide him under the ground, make your opponent worry about the way you're playing, and wait for him to pop up, because you're almost guaranteed to let a troop die while he's underground. And unfortunately, he tunnels after, I think, 3 turns. I'm almost positive it's 3 turns.
It's a 3-turn, yeah.
Yep.
And that means he shows up on turn 5. And that's a little bit unsettling, because then you're, instead of getting a 2/2 for 2, you're getting a 4/4 for 5, which is, in all intents and purposes, a very good card on its own. You have to worry about getting a 2/2 for 5. So forth and so forth and so forth. There's a lot of downsides as long as you can't guarantee a troop dies. But you can almost always guarantee a troop
Especially
dies.
if you're playing Benoshi.
Especially if you're playing Benoshi. Having a Grave Nibbler enables you to play Cottontail Scout more freely. It enables you to grab the Benoshi targets quite a bit more earlier, because you know that you have a reason to sacrifice as well as a thing to sacrifice. And it just overall works out to being a good tunneling troop in that it affects the way your opponent plays. Is that Monsoon? Probably not, but it's what every opponent thinks about. Is it Burrow Bunny? Because it could be Burrow Bunny until it's got the second counter on it and it didn't surface. Is it Wazakashi Ambusher? In which case I need to be careful about what I play. And is it one of the robots? It's probably not one of the robots, but...
So, kind of like the Grave Nibbler, it really depends on the type of player you're playing. If it's a veteran player, he'll be thinking all that. Sometimes it's not as effective against some of the newer players.
No, but at that case, I still have a 2/2 for 2. And that's, to me, in this pack, better than any of the other options. Firesoul Wizard is pretty high up there, and all of that's being said. But if this is my 3rd pick and Wazakashi Ambusher is already missing, I'm also looking at this pack and going, well, I only have this one blood card to look at. Like, Burrow Bunny's in there, but nobody's going to cut Burrow Bunny. So if I need another tunneler, I can get it. And, the humans are there, but if I don't have a reason to be humans yet... Now, of course, if I take the Exalted Victory in a different pack second and I get this pack, I'm going to go Firesoul Wizard or Vanguard of Cerulea. Like, no doubt in it. Like, I grab a human here. But, I'm just assuming a blank 1 and 2 at this point. So that is my 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Will's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Tien, to finalize things, now that you've heard my over-rationalizing of everything, what is your 3rd pick? And honestly, why do you value Adrenaline Rush so high?
I don't. It's
To the Skies? Weird.
That's actually
could you say To the Skies really quick?
Nope.
Is there a reason why you're
I say
asking
Exalted
this?
Victory.
I was hoping that we could get you to say To the Skies and then have Elysian edit it so that you said To the Skies.
As my 3rd pick. No, I would probably take Exalted Victory for the reasons you said. I would like to cut it, and it does open options out. I personally don't value the part where it says humans get Swift Strike and Steadfast as much, because I've used Exalted Victory before on just random Diamond and like Wild Troops, and it works just fine.
Exactly. Yeah, so
especially with like say something like Rekosaurus, you get all your track troops get crushed. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So Arena's out, $100,000 tournament, some sealed discussion, and we talked about a pack. It's been a fairly productive podcast, a little on the short side as to what we've had recently, but don't worry, Mike plans to be back in full steam for another hot-headed podcast next time, and we'll probably stretch the time limit once again because we always do that. My name has been Nicholas Pedrasky. You can find me in-game as Pentachills on Twitch and Twitter as Pentachills. Basically anywhere in the world as Pentachills, except for places where other people are Pentachills. Will Gabriel is Gprime TV on Twitch and Twitter. And in-game, he's just Gprime. Tecnophi's a guy. And our sound engineer for this episode is... What are you on Twitch?
Tecnophi, but I rarely use it.
But you did recently put up a video of yourself playing Hex on a touchscreen, which some people might want to go and check out. So that's pretty cool. You're also on Twitter at Tecnophi, and that's pretty awesome. Our sound engineer for this episode is Mark Duze. For any updates on us streaming when we post the show, other happenings in the Hex community, please follow us on Twitter at 2turnsahead. Leave a comment on the show's post at 2turnsahead.com. That's the number 2 in both of those situations. You can go to 5shards.com. You can find us on Reddit. You can find us on YouTube. You can even email us at the number 2turnsahead@gmail.com, which is kind of butchered the way that goes, but it's 2turnsahead@gmail.com with the number 2. I'm sure you've figured this out at that point. Finally, if you want automatic updates, please subscribe to us on iTunes, and if you feel inclined, give us a positive rating on the iTunes store. Rating the podcast will give other viewers a better chance of discovering the podcast on iTunes and helps us grow the Hex community. Last week, the Corey Jones interview got well over 300 downloads, I believe it was, like in just like the first couple of days. Thank you all for listening. Stay lucky.
My side.
Yep.
And 3, 2, 1. Clap.
You gotta be kidding me.
It was so worth it. It was so worth it to just wait. Okay. Don't stop. Don't stop recording. It's fine.
Keep it going.
It's fine.
Keep it rolling.
Not for realsies. I will not mess with you at this point.
All of this stuff is going to be cut out, so you don't have to worry about starting and stopping yourself.
I'm not worried about that. I'm just pissed that Penta did that to me.
I'm sorry, Technically.
He did it to me.
You should be.
Stay lucky. That's last.
Yeah, but I mean, he
have
already cut it.
Going here.
He already cut it.
Well,
It's
no,
too
I
late.
didn't.
I don't want to know.
5 shots.
You're saying that like
just watch. They're gonna add a 6. They're gonna add a 6
turns behind.
They're gonna add a 6 shard, and then we're gonna look silly.
Behind the scenes, back when they were deciding on a name for the website after Pentachills pestered Zubrin for a tournament, and Zubrin decided a website was above and beyond the calling, we couldn't decide on a name for well over 2 weeks, so Pentachills just spammed 5 shards in chat every 20 minutes.
Really? Did you really do that?
Now we have the website 5 shards.
His story misses the fact that I was the one who did originally suggest the name 5 shards, and he heard it in his head so many times that he decided that he was the one who came up with it, after all.
I'm just gonna say...
Yeah, go
I'm just gonna
back.
say, a hexagon is 6 sides, right? Mm-hmm.